Hi,
My
welcome.
name is Kay. I have three children right now. They are in private school.
Yeah,
We're in California,
nice.
and I am trying to. Well, the youngest one is 4, so he's not in any kind of school yet. But I'm trying to. Sorry, it's noisy. Um, just trying to learn more about deschooling because I am planning on homeschooling them this upcoming school year.
Yes.
And they've been in school all their lives, so it's just going to be a
Yeah.
big transition for them and me. Just trying
And
to,
you. Yeah,
figure
probably
out
more
what I'll be
you.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've learned it was more me than it was the kids. The kids roll with stuff. But it's really
Yeah.
lovely to meet you. So would you tell me how to pronounce your name?
Muniza.
Muniza. Okay. Just
Thank
exactly
you.
as it looks. I'm
Oh no,
Teresa.
yes.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
So lovely to meet you. And I think, is that Nadira that's here?
Yes, yes, I am here.
Hi, nice to
I
see you
don't,
again. Or
nice to
yes,
see you too.
nice to hear you.
Yes, I'm not sure how long I'll be here, but I am here.
No problem. I understand. That happens. So do both of you want to share, or somebody that has shared her goal for deschooling because she has an intention to homeschool in the new year and you'd like to know how to go into this homeschooling thing. And Nadira, do you have a goal for this deschool class?
My goal is just to still stay on track with
Okay.
school while deschooling.
Yeah. Okay. So what does stay on track mean for you?
Um, I guess it would mean while we have scaled back on a schedule, I guess you could say, or a rigid routine of
Yeah.
sorts, we I don't want to be too lax. I don't want to say, like we'll do these 3 activities and then that's it for the rest of the day. And then
Yeah.
maybe the next day we don't do anything, like I
Yeah.
don't want to be too lax with the deschooling, like giving, extended brain breaks, if you will. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that we're still not necessarily the word I'm looking for, I guess, traditionally learning, but we're still learning.
So what's keeping you from that right now, do you think?
I think it's my mindset that because I grew up with traditional learning, that he should
Mhm.
be doing more every day and he should be learning more every day. I try to cover at least 2 subjects a day. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, all right, maybe we'll push in a third, or maybe I'll add another activity sheet, or,
Yeah.
maybe I'll try to make a game, even though, we should probably just stop for the day because I feel like because we do so much in a traditional school day that I should
Yeah.
be trying to do more. So I know it's my mindset that is focused on I guess the deschooling part of not trying to make everything so traditional the way that I had it, because that doesn't work for him and it's not really what I
Yeah.
want for him or me at this time anyway.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that there's really two parts of you, one that is wanting to relax a bit and kind of go with the flow, or you can clarify my words on that. And then the other side that says, oh, I think we need to do more academics or maintain a routine and maybe even add
Yes.
in a few more things. So you've got two parts of you.
Yes, I do want to, like you said, yes, I do want to be more go with the flow, but I do want to stay, I guess, on the proper path
Yeah.
of keeping things going. I don't want it to be
Okay.
too long with the breaks.
Okay. Yeah. And remind me, you have one son and I don't remember how old he is.
He's 7, technically second grade,
7.
I believe.
Right. Yeah. And Muniza, you said you have a 4-year-old and you have a 6-year-old, was it?
Sorry, it took me a second to find unmute.
No problem.
So I have an 11-year-old who's in fifth
11.
grade right now. He'll be going into sixth. I have a 7-year-old who'll be going into third. She's in second right now. And then the 4-year-old who just turned 4, and I'm thinking maybe it would be nice to do some kind of, some activities for him, like do like a TK where we're still kind of playing and learning a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, ladies, for sharing that. That gives me a really good sense of how to engage because I'm so accustomed to sitting in my closet and podcasting and just speaking what I think is the most important thing, that when I am in a coaching scenario with you or other people, that I'm here, then I really need to hear where are you coming from and what's the most valuable thing. I don't want to just speak for the sake of saying everything that's in my mind. So thank you for sharing that. And definitely interrupt if you're like, you know what? I don't understand what this means, or I want a clarifying question, because this is our opportunity to do that. It's straight up, I don't know how much you know about me. And if you say nothing, totally cool. But would you just let me know where you know me from, so that I can also know what you know about what I'm going to engage in?
So for me, I'm sorry, I don't know much about you, but I have a
Yeah,
dear friend who
it's fine.
homeschools,
Yeah.
who's been a homeschooling mom for a while.
Yeah,
And she was the one who kind of gave me, she told me about this seminar conference, and she was the one who kind of motivated me to join. And I did
great.
visit your website, so I have a little bit of an idea, but not much.
Okay, no, that's good. That is very helpful for me. You know, that is the number one way that I connect in with people. I mean, I'm on social media and I have a podcast and all that, and a website and stuff, but it's always word of mouth that somebody says, "Hey, have you worked with her?" It's just how the world works, eh? And if you saw where I was on the map, you'd be like, I kind of need the internet, because I'm a half an hour away from a small town, and the closest friends that are right next to us are deer. But Nadira, would you share? We have connected before, but would you remind me where we met, or where you connected with me?
Yes, through social media on Instagram.
Right.
I
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Just gonna have a sip of tea. I literally just drove into the yard because I had to go pick up one of my kids from town. He's making dinner, and I'm gonna have a cup of tea. I hope you can have some tea too. So, true confessional, I don't know if you've heard me say this, but I actually don't like the word homeschool, because I don't think it's an accurate reflection of what we're doing. We can't play a role of being a mom and also being a teacher in the same space. Or I should say, we can, but it can be quite uncomfortable. And it really changes how we mother, or it changes how we engage as the teacher, and then we set aside the mother role. That's been my experience. So if I haven't met you already, I have 4 kids who are almost all graduated, which is really weird. But my oldest is almost 22. I've got a 20-year-old now as of last week, a 17-year-old about to graduate, and my youngest is 14 and a half. And we've been doing this for a very long time. In fact, I came across homeschooling in a bookstore. I came across a book about homeschooling. It was called The Homeschool Option: Is Homeschooling Right for You? And I picked up that book with the intentions of getting my arguments against it, because I knew it wasn't right for me, because I was not one of those people. That's what I thought. I'm a mainstream kind of gal. I don't do that kind of thing. And I don't have a jean jumper. And I want my kids to be socialized. And I really said all that stuff. And then by the end of the week, after I'd read the book, I went, we're homeschooling. So I had a big flip. And the same week, we decided to move an entirely different province. I'm in Canada. And we decided to change an entirely different job role. So we had a really big week along with that book. But so over the course of time, I probably in my 3rd year was when things started significantly feeling like they're breaking down, or they just weren't working for me the way that I really wanted them to. I had this vision of how my homeschool would look, and it looked like a perfect home where I'd have my 3 little girls in the little white dresses. They'd go in and out of the door, and go to the garden, and we do poetry, and we would do all sorts of things outdoors. And everybody would just, come in the afternoon. We'd have a cup of tea and we'd read on the sofa, and everything would be happy. We'd be happy all the time. And by the 3rd year, slump month, not coincidentally, I discovered I didn't want to do this anymore. I was very dissatisfied by it. I felt a lot of conflict. The kids were pushing back a lot. The oldest one, especially, my second one, was you could say the ideal example of a homeschooled kid, because she was compliant. She always wanted to do studies. She wanted a routine. She wanted the colored markers to make it look pretty and organized. And she was the only one of the 4. And so it was uncomfortable, to say the least. And I wasn't happy with how we were doing it. I was very much trying to bring my private school home because my kids were also in private school before. And I started in July because that's what one does when one has the opportunity to do whatever they want. They get really excited about it and are like, okay, I've got the educational posters and I've got a little bell. I had a bell. I have the bell still, don't use it. But at 8 o'clock every morning, I tried to get the kids to come into the room, and we had all the curriculum. We had all the books and all the plans and a very solid routine that looked more like a private school than the private school they came from. And it was fun until it wasn't, which was about that third year. And it was about that time that I went to the local library and happened upon a book by John Holt. Are either of you familiar with John Holt? Or anybody
Yeah.
tell you about John? Yeah. So John Holt and John Taylor Gatto were really significant authors that influenced how I shifted away from a traditional homeschool approach. John Taylor Gatto actually is Spitfire. The things that he says will definitely energize you to see your homeschool in a very different way, to see your child's education very differently. He was a 30-year award-winning educator in the system who, on the day he was awarded a significant award, he actually spoke about how the school isn't serving kids. And you can hear a little bit more of the things that I've learned from him and that I think we can be informed by him on my podcast right now, because it happens to be the episode that I released this week is about how John Taylor Gatto informs our homeschool. But I bring them up because they had such a huge influence on how I homeschool. So within maybe a few months of reading two of the books that they've written, they've each written many books, but I read those books and I said to my oldest daughter, I brought her to a Starbucks one day and I said, just so you know, we're never going to homeschool the way we've homeschooled. We're going to unschool. Until we didn't. And then there was probably 6 months where we solidly unschooled. And then I could see that my second daughter that I shared about, who liked routine and wanted educational opportunities, she wanted things in a form the way that most of us do, because we're very familiar with the conventional system. And so I started to shift more toward another philosophy. If you've heard of Charlotte Mason, it's another homeschool philosophy, but I moved a little bit that direction. And then I learned about so many other philosophies that really by, the end of my homeschooling years, I'm just like doing it all, whatever works, but how to get there. And that's the thing, especially Muniza, I wonder how you're feeling about the idea of going into homeschool. Are you anticipatory right now, trying to get all the things planning or all the planning in gear, or are you just relieved to take your children out of the system?
I think it's a little bit of both right now for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm,
Well said.
I'm kind of planning and, but my kids aren't very excited about it. At least my son isn't, the older one,
Yeah.
because he wants to stay in school. He's kind of like your second child that you described,
Yeah. Like
very,
school.
routine and like school. So
Yeah.
we're gonna see how this goes.
Yeah, well, just for the record, my oldest kiddo, who right through the entire homeschool years until she was in grade 10, she was pretty much unschooled. She was naturally academic by nature, in that she loved reading, and she loved reading history, and she loved still, learning about physical anatomy, and she'd go down rabbit holes of all sorts of academic type things. And she really enjoyed languages, and she was really good at them. And now she's doing a double major in a university. So just so you know, things can shift dramatically, where even though you're engaging them a certain way, they can make massive shifts later. But even though that's actually, a solid decade and a half for her, even you in 1 year will see huge changes in each of your kids. They will, maybe, I can't say this for your child, of course, but maybe you'll have a child that will be unmotivated and bored, or maybe they're completely satisfied being at home and having more quiet than they've ever had, or maybe they ask you to do more extracurriculars than you ever thought you would imagine including, and then even ask them to find a job to pay for it all, because that's what we did. And they surprised us because they actually did. Oh, looks like I might have lost you. Let's just see here. Anybody want to confirm that you're not gone?
Not gone, still
Oh,
here.
good.
I'm
Good.
I'm here. Yeah.
So, there is one way to homeschool, is how we often think about it when we first enter homeschooling. We have this idea of how it's going to look, and it almost never does. And the reason is mostly because we don't have a really strong grasp on what our kids need. When I'm coaching my homeschool or homeschool moms, I'll ask 3 questions, and it is what you're doing working for you? Is it working for your kids? And what do you think about an education? What is an education anyway? It might be of value for you to write those down, because even though they're going to be the ones that in 10 years from now, you're going to be like, wow, those are the only things that matter at this point, is really how I perceive what an education should be for my kids. Is it working for your kids? And is it working for you? So I have on my website, I have a list of things that I think we can deschool from. Have either of you heard that word before, deschooling?
I heard it. I was looking up all
Yes.
types of terms when I began this homeschooling. So yes.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, it really is just trying to come away from what conventional ideas are about what an education is. And there are so many. There are so many, and it doesn't seem to me that it stops. I'm not quite 2 decades in, but I still feel like I could do this indefinitely. I could have children indefinitely, which I will not, but I could do this indefinitely and be always learning about one more thing that probably would be useful for me to let go of, so that I can gauge my home, my kids, the way that really serves each of us. When I speak about those 3 questions, I'm curious what your thoughts are. The
Can you
questions of,
repeat the first 2 questions?
is it working for you? Is it working for your kids? And what do you think an education is anyway?
Well, I think that the having a less full schedule, I guess you could say, is working for him. For me, I'm trying to, I guess, realize that I don't need to do all of those things in one
Yeah,
day for him. He is picking up, on what we're doing in the shorter time period that we are doing it. And I realize, like I said, again, it's my mindset with the 8 hours of learning of, traditionally, because my stepson, he's 21 now.
yeah,
He traditionally went through, elementary school, middle school, and high school, and graduated from high school.
yeah,
So, now that I'm homeschooling this one, it's completely different. So, the all day long learning is what I'm used to.
yeah,
And I sometimes I feel like I should be doing more. And like I said, I think it's more my mindset that I'm still trying to change, that
yeah.
he is getting what he needs in, the couple of hours or few hours that we do, different activities and different things as part of our school day.
And you said you were conventionally educated too?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, most of us are. I'm always intrigued when I meet someone that isn't, because there are some second generation homeschoolers. But yeah, so I actually heard you say that 8 hours of time that we do traditional school. So I don't know if you remember what it was like to be in school. there are so many gaps in the school day. Like sometimes there's 15 minutes or 20 minutes of actually eating lunch, which frankly is not a lot of time to eat lunch, until kids go out to recess and then they run around and play. But between the actual hours where kids aren't doing recess or lunch, they're still having perhaps instructional time, but there's instructional time with time in the classroom where the kids are moving around, getting their things, or somebody's like, I need to go to the bathroom. And so then the teacher has to stop and go, okay, or there's kids talking in the back, or there's all sorts of movement and energy. And if they could gather up all that time, and you look at how much time is actually spent on doing things that are not really instructional time, there is not actual practical learning going on here, you would discover that there's a lot of time that's used in the day that you don't see your child, but that doesn't mean that they're actually nose to the grindstone or actually reading a book or participating in a science experiment or running around in the gym doing duck duck goose, or I don't know if they're really little, but there's actually not as much time for them to practically learn in a classroom. That did not dissuade me from spending 8 hours trying to educate my kids, because I still did actually think that I should have my kids in some sort of formal routine from one time to the other, about 8 to 3. And that is a useful construct for a school system to organize a lot of kids in a space. But for our kids, even my grade 12 kiddo who was homeschooling, it's 8 hours was a long time to be reading a book or to be studying. So does it work for him though? Does he like doing that? Your son, your youngest?
Likes what we're doing now, yes.
Yeah.
Before I had written up like this complete schedule, like it was traditional school,
Yeah.
with timers and everything, and we would start at a certain time, and then we'd go through all everything, and then I try to make sure we fit everything in. If there was like a page at the end and we were supposed to be done with that time period, I'd be like, well, let's still try to get it done, and
Yeah.
so now we have more. We start a little later in the morning, and we do a few activities, and we'll have the brain breaks, and then we'll have the lunch break and the recess, and then we might come back and do something else like a science experiment or a game or something,
Yeah.
or we might just call it a day after lunch. And
Right.
he does like this better. He does understand, and I guess maybe it's like a body time thing that around 2, 3 o'clock that he's pretty much done with school.
Yeah. So you actually have noticed that? What have you seen when he's done with school?
I've noticed, well, physically, I've noticed he sometimes he's yawns a little bit more than usual.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that his handwriting seems like, I don't know, a little messier than
Mm-hmm.
usual, because I guess he's getting tired of learning or tired of writing. I can't say tired of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when if he's reading, if it's his reading time, he'll, because we read out loud, he'll um he'll hesitate on words that he knows,
Right.
because his brain, I guess, is like like slowing down maybe from the school day. Or if it'll be like simple math equations, he'll, instead of just knowing it, he'll look at me like really, do I have to count this kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I have noticed just his whole uh, body, and the things that he says and does changes in the afternoon when he's pretty much done. And like I
So
said, we
did you
we
always recognize that? Were you always aware of that when you began homeschooling?
no, no. When I began, like I said, I was following this schedule, and I was trying to
Mhm.
make sure that he was getting everything that he was supposed to every day. And no, I just noticed that, when we were done at 3 o'clock, that yeah, he was done. And I would push it all the way until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon with everything.
Yeah, I did that too until it didn't work for me. Yeah, I'm with you. And that's awesome that you're noticing when he is fading out and you see that no, he's not engaged anymore. Because if you pushed it, what would happen?
He would get upset.
Mhm.
Sometimes he would simply say, I don't want to read this anymore, I don't want to do this anymore, or can this be the last thing, or are we done? or
Mhm.
sometimes he would just be overwhelmed and tired, and sometimes he'd get a little, not necessarily whiny, but a little whiny or a little tired, and then then I'd know, okay, we need to stop now.
Right. Yeah. Wow, that's really great that you're actually able to identify that. I have one other thing that I want to chat with you about. And Muniza, if you'd like to add in your 2 cents, I'd love to hear it too. But on my website or no, actually on the page, what do we call it? The Deschool Your Homeschool Intensive. So I'm doing a formal intensive next Thursday. I have 25 ways I think we can deschool our homeschools. But I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts, Muniza, on what Nadira was sharing.
Well, since I have never homeschooled before, I am still kind of, I don't know what it'll be like once we start. I do know, just from doing my little research, from a lot of the people in my community do homeschool. So, and then some of my close friends, but they usually say, that you do get done in about 2 to 3 hours, and you don't need to. And, one of the first things they've told me is that don't treat homeschool like school at home.
Right.
So, that is something that I need to keep in mind, because I am that kind of person who's kind of, wants to push,
Mhm.
but
Me
I just
too.
need to be more mindful of that, for sure, before when I do start. And yeah, I mean, I guess each child is different. The way they learn
Yep.
is completely
Mhm.
different. I can tell you that I already know that my daughter, the second one, is completely different from my elder
Mhm.
one. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge to try and see, what works for one doesn't work for the other, and just kind of, you know, so I'm still so fresh and so new. I really don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome, Envy, by the way, Teresa here. And so Nadira and Muniza are both sharing a little bit. Hi, nice to officially meet you. They're both sharing about their homeschools, or actually Nadira has a 7-year-old and she's been homeschooling, and Muniza is going to be homeschooling in the fall. And what you were just sharing, I wanted to jump on and say, what I was speaking to when we were first talking about homeschool, that word, and how that word homeschool is not one that I like because it associates a school with a home. And I was essentially really trying to emphasize that there's a difference between the two. We can sometimes, you especially can see this on social media, sometimes people will put their kids into home or into the mudroom or something, get their jackets on, get their backpacks on, tell them to walk around the block, and then come back at home, and now you're in school. And I'm not actually kidding. I've seen that. And it's totally cute for a reel. It is. Here's why I think it's not useful for us as moms. Because us as moms, even if we were trained as teachers, our role with our child is mother. It's embodying nurture. It's embodying leader. It's embodying guide or coach. Sometimes it's embodying various other things, but it's also and always has been embodying teacher. Before our kids went into school, or if they went into school, you taught them how to distinguish colors, or you taught them how to tie their shoes, or you taught them all sorts of different things. And so I would suggest that you are already a teacher. And the way that you go about teaching in the home is a lot different. Is anybody here a teacher before they homeschool? I've interviewed a lot of teachers on my podcast. So I wasn't a teacher, I was an RN. But when I hear this repeatedly every time I chat with a previous teacher, that they say it's more challenging for me to let go of concepts from my teaching realm as a homeschool mom, even more so than the regular mom that doesn't have all that teaching stuff in their head. And so I just want to add that that's one of the things that we can deschool from, is this notion that we are supposed to embody a different energy or a different posture towards our kids. So I'm curious how you differentiate the two, a mother and a teacher, or if you see the difference, the qualities between a mother, or the differences between a mother and a teacher.
that a
I can't.
question for all of us?
Hi, what's that?
Hey, sorry, is that a question for all of us, or is it
Yeah.
addressed to?
I am
or-
actually. I'm addressing you. If you'd like to share, I'm delighted to hear your thoughts. Love your backdrop. That's really cool.
I'm in the hotel, last day hotel in Japan. So
In Japan, how cool is that?
yeah, it's snowing outside. My family
Wow,
went skiing and left me here. So
looks
yeah,
beautiful.
I don't know. This is our, I think we're coming to our 4th year homeschooling, and I'm
Mhm.
still struggling.
Yeah.
I think your question made me think. I think the difference is that the teacher try to teach them what they want the kids to learn. The mother, for me anyway, is to look at my kid and see what areas they need
Mhm.
to work on, what their interests are, and help them to work in that area. That's
Mhm.
another instance, but it's
Mother
not
instinct,
easy.
yeah. A
It's
mother
not
instinct that's
easy.
teaching. Mhm.
It's not easy because I feel like it depends on how you get into homeschooling. I got into homeschooling because of COVID.
Yeah.
And I saw what my kid was learning in school was not sufficient. And it was just horrible dealing with remote schooling with their school. So I went into like, oh, I can teach them better. And then I got a lot of fought, like they fight back.
Mhm.
My boys 7 and 9, they're bright. They learn really quick. So that made me want to accelerate them.
Yeah.
And I accelerate them. I find that the material doesn't stick because yes, they understand, but they have no interest. So they will forget or they don't care. They make minor mistake or whatever. So now I'm in the road of like, how can I change my view or my goal of homeschooling that would best fit my kids' needs? And I find that's really hard because I was a typical A student in school.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it is challenging. And we've actually had this conversation. And by the way, everybody that is here and is engaged is going to have access to a recording. So it is recorded. If Anvi and Sarah, I don't know, it's being recorded right now. And then I can share it with you and you can look back if you like. It is tricky because we've almost all of us, I don't know about Sarah, but we've all come from a conventional system and we've all been taught this is how an education looks. This is what we do. If you want to be smart and live a smart life and be able to do, I don't know, a master's program or a PhD, and then have a 6-figure income with a house and a 2-bedroom garage or a 2-door garage, and then go for a vacation in Hawaii every year. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I've said this so many times though. Hawaii, I don't know if that has any interest to you in Japan or where you're at in Japan, but you have these ideas of what a life that is successful looks like. And I zoom that direction and say, okay, let's imagine our child and they've checked off all those boxes. Now, did they live a successful life? Or what's our goal in the education anyways? Like, what's the point of it? And because I did do a classical homeschool for a long time, and I did Latin, as I said, for a long time with my kids, I know that the root word for education is educato, which means to raise up. And I always ask, to raise up what? Are we raising up this version of success that we believe to be the best for them? Or is their happy, successful life because of those things or whatever other things you might add to the list? Or is it so that they don't look like there's gaps, so that grandma or grandpa, doesn't find any gaps in your child's education? Or like, what's the intention behind the education? It's to raise up. To raise up what? And now I'm not going to tell you, I actually am not going to define what I think you should think about what an education should be for your child. I don't think so. That's not my responsibility. I think as parents, we have this beautiful freedom and this incredible opportunity to enable our kids to go in the way that they should go based on who they are, to raise up them, to live their life on purpose. And I think that is part of it, but I would bookmark that and say, but also you were placed here as their parent. And because you were placed here as their parent, then how you think about an education or what you want to give them or offer them matters too. So I'm curious if there's anything that's coming up for people or they'd like to speak to or comment on. I take it into this bigger meta kind of space because in our practical day-to-day, all the things we do are pretty cool. They're pretty cool. But we can easily get into the routines of what we're doing. And we have some really neat ideas. And so does everybody else on Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, and wherever. And they're great. And do those things align with our value of what an education is? If we can get really clear on what that is, then we're not worried about what other people think, or we're not worried about the gaps, or we're not concerned about many things that we could be concerned about.
Sorry, Zanvi.
Yeah, no, jump in.
I understand what you're saying, but again, it's really hard.
Mhm. Yeah, girl, I didn't say it was easy. Yeah, I know. I agree. I
Yes,
have the beautiful opportunity of being able to look back
okay.
because I've been where you're at. So my goal is not to say, don't be concerned. I'm saying you can be emboldened to know that that's your goal. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe your goal is to definitely churn out a PhD engineer. Maybe that's your goal.
So for me, my goal is because my kids are bright but they also need help in self-regulating, like very highly impulsive,
Yeah.
very competitive,
Mhm.
blot out everything they want to say. And we work a lot on self-regulation.
Mhm.
So our goal for them is to be healthy, mental health wise, to be happy,
Mhm.
and to know how to work toward what they want in life.
Yeah.
And they absolutely know what they want right now.
Really?
They,
Wow.
I mean, they want to read, they want screen time, they want
Yeah.
video games. We've been skiing here for 2 weeks, and this morning they woke up crying because we're leaving tomorrow.
Hmm.
Because they know how to ski and they love it. So they
Yeah.
absolutely know what they want, but they well, okay. So they also like to learn, right? So my oldest is taking class, is history class, story of science, and he absolutely loved the material. But
Mm.
he has to be in a live lesson and have to interact with the other kids. And when we are here, we miss the lesson. We have to watch the videos. It just like taking him forever to go through it.
Well,
So
how fast does he need to go through it?
um not fast, but we just take, like, we try to catch up because we've been away for like 3 weeks.
Oh, because you're trying to keep on task what everybody else is doing in that class? I see.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
tricky thing that. So you have two opportunities. You could actually try to rush him through it. And
Which is not gonna retain anything.
yeah, so exactly. But you could. I have. It doesn't work, but you could do that. Also, it stresses kids' brains, but that's a different discussion. It actually is more likely that they will learn less in all scenarios if they're always stressed. So, I probably have so many things that I think that we could speak to right now. I would really love to hear if Sarah wants to share about her homeschool as well. Like I'm thinking right now, we could be talking about gaps. We could be talking about how do you know when it's right for your child or the pace is the right thing for your child, or how to include them in the homeschool or, you know, your routine or how you're going to choose things. Certainly don't. Yes, Sarah, go ahead. I'm going to bookmark something in my head or write it down so I don't forget.
Okay.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. I don't mind. I'm going to turn on my camera, but I'm sitting in my car.
Lovely.
That's
Hi.
where I was. Hello. I
Hi.
so yeah, my kids are with me. Let's see. Well, I actually recommended this to my friend Muniza. Muniza's in here. And
Hi.
because he's considering homeschooling, I'm not sure how much she shared about herself, but I'm not going to talk about her. I'll let her do that if she wants to. But I've been homeschooling this is my 5th year. My oldest is 9. So he's in 4th grade, and he wants to show his head right now.
Hi.
I have always, since I started homeschooling, I was very attracted to unschooling, and because my kids went to like preschool, Montessori preschool. That's the extent of like what formal schooling they've received. I guess until now, I still do feel like, I don't worry so much about gaps, but what I'm struggling right now with is not necessarily relevant to the topic. It's just more the whole juggling all my responsibilities and trying to feel like I am really engaged and present in homeschooling with my kids.
Yeah.
And they have, I feel like I am starting to see some of the fruits of unschooling in terms of like how they have the motivation, the internal, like intrinsic motivation to kind of take charge of their own learning. And I do like to give them a lot of, choices in terms of what they want, like instead of just, there's an aspect, I was traditionally homeschooled, so I still struggle with, like, I guess trying to find the middle ground between like just do whatever you want,
Mhm.
and then when excuse me, you guys, can you please be quiet? Thank you. And then going into like I'm the teacher mode, and then
Right.
that usually
Yeah.
doesn't go over very well.
Yeah.
So like I don't
Did you
feel
hear
good
me speak about that, teacher versus mother?
Yes, and I was going to say too that I like when I think about it, I don't think there's a difference. Like I think that mothers
Yeah.
I think we are teachers, and
Yeah.
and that's maybe why I also have been attracted to unschooling, is because I learn in a very practical kind of day-to-day way. I actually really enjoyed school too as a child, but in terms of it's just difficult for me to go into that I don't know, that teacher mode that I automatically think like, okay, this is what it looks like. We're sitting down and we're doing
Yeah.
stuff together at a table, and like I'm telling you guys what to do, and sometimes they're really open to that.
So it's interesting, Sarah, because you and Anvi have shared that you do homeschooling differently at base. You're speaking to unschooling, and I'm not sure, I don't actually want to ask anybody what's your philosophy, because we're always changing anyway. We're all going to end up eclectic sometime anyhow. But Anvi, you sound like you have a more traditional approach, which I've also had. And yet it's really important that you both feel that the way you're engaging your home education reflects who you are and what you value as to what an education is and how that should show up in your home. And that might look very different. Each of you may be doing things very differently, but the goal is to say, do I know that this is working for me? Do I feel at peace with how I'm approaching this? Is it working for my child? And get really clear on what is an education anyway. What do you believe it is? And we just spoke about how it's actually raising up a specific child. But when you speak about this feeling of juggling, it actually really does get engaged. When you begin to deschool, or you allow yourself to let go of the assumptions about how an education should look, or how it should be given or imparted toward a child, or how you're going to engage all of that. When you let go of all the things that you were taught to believe about what an education is, you aren't juggling as much, and you are more present because you feel more at peace with your choice. And when somebody randomly in public, Sarah, do you mind actually putting the
Oh, muting
mute on?
myself, sorry.
No, it's all right. It's easier for the recording. Thank you. But if you are actually, randomly asked in the grocery store, why are your children not in school? Most of the time, it's because they want to know if there's a holiday that they're missing when people are asking. But every once in a while, people are being nosy, or when an aunt or a cousin or a relative gets nosy and suggests that you shouldn't be homeschooling, then you actually don't feel as defensive either, because you get really clear on what your values are. You know what you think about an education, and you know that you are the mother. So you're deciding to show up the way you're showing up. You're going to engage education the way that you've determined. You're watching your child. You feel at peace with yourself. And not that you come to the end of this, because as I had said in the very beginning, to this day, I still see ways that I'm deschooling. So you don't ever get to the end of it, but you do very much get to a place of peace and acceptance. And so you may do things very differently. Each one of you are doing things differently. And there is no one on planet Earth that is you. And as you know, there's no one on planet Earth that has the exact same kids as you, because even you are like, who are these people? But they're not the same, for sure. You know that. And your goal is to engage in education for your specific kids. So as I was saying earlier, there's a bunch of different things that I have on this group coaching page, 25 different things that I think we can deschool from. And I'm just going to throw a few of them out here that we haven't talked about. I think we've talked about 4 or 5. We assume kids should always be kept busy. We assume that they are never allowed to be bored, that if they're not motivated, they're not learning. We assume kids need to identify in a particular grade, or that they have to have a teacher to learn from. We assume learning comes best through lectures, textbooks, and testing, or that kids need to learn certain things at certain times. We assume kids typically are at the same developmental level to receive those knowledge bits at similar times, or that they need to be interested in things we're interested in because we're interested in them. We assume we can organize learning and create systems of learning, or that we need to be certified to be a teacher. We assume that we can switch from one role of teacher to mother, depending on what we're talking about. If it's cursive, we're teacher. If we're at the kitchen table explaining manners, we're mom. Or we assume that there's only certain times of the day that you can learn, or certain subjects that should be considered learning. And I'll stop at 14, because I think this is the most important element of a home education for Maniza, who isn't yet homeschooling. When I was homeschooling before the pandemic, this question actually I've learned is not as popular right now. I don't know if you've heard it. I would love to hear. Just type yes if you've heard this in the comment section. But what about socialization? Like, how are your kids getting socialized? You're still hearing that? Because that was like, how many times am I going to get asked this? And yet people will turn around. Okay, so yes, people will turn around and say, oh, you have the loveliest children. They can talk to anybody. But what about socialization? And I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense. In a homeschool environment, we do have social opportunities. I do often think that people are not asking how our kids are getting socialized, or are our kids getting socialized. They're actually asking, do your kids get like locked in the basement so they never see another child? Or do they get guitar lessons and get to play with other kids and go do interesting things with other people? I think they're usually concerned more about social opportunities, but not always. And so when it comes to socialization, I think that's really just us engaging our children. How do you be a human being that considers other people, or knows how to deal with her own emotions, knows how to deal with conflict, and about, a million other things that relate to relationships and how we're relating to others or ourselves. The mere act of you spending as much time as you do with your kids in a home environment, that attachment, a connection that your kids have, I think that's the most important element that we can offer our kids in a homeschool. And we don't have to try. And also, just so you know, I think that includes an imperfect mother, which is all of us, imperfect moms who lose their stuff, or occasionally, lose their temper, or they're disorganized, or they're too organized, or they're, you fill in the blank. The imperfect mother, the mother that is every mother on planet Earth, doesn't always hit the mark for her kids. Even in that homeschool, those kids are more advantaged simply because they're connected and attached to you. And if you want to do some more research on that, I'm speaking conversationally, but there's a lot of actual research around attachment theory. And so what I've noticed is that there isn't a homeschool philosophy that is more likely to churn out a more socialized kid. We can approach our kids or their education in any form, but we'll still have a more attached child. And if people ask you, I don't know if you've heard this, okay, 4 out of 5 of you are saying yes. So, okay, the 4 people that are homeschooling right now, anyways, I've heard you. What about socialization? Is there anything else that you want to explore when it comes to a discussion about socialization? Oh, wow, look at our time go.
Actually, yes, because I
Okay.
have my oldest is very social. He can talk to anyone, he make friends with anyone. He always want more.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that kind of kids?
Yeah.
He needs that social environment like all the time. He would rather be in ski school than with skiing with his dad.
Right.
And he
Yeah.
doesn't mind. He's a different instructor every day, a different kid every day. That's
Yeah.
okay. Make new friends. So what do you do with that kind of kids?
Well, I guess you have to decide what is the best. I don't, should I use the word balance? Bad word, but like some sort of comfort level of him not always getting everything he wants all the time, but him getting more social time than you are normally accustomed to providing. Some balance in there, because the reality is he's not always going to have everything work the way he wants. You can't stay in Japan indefinitely, although I think it's so cool that you're there. And also, aren't you heading back to Bermuda? Yeah, so we're just all wondering, really? Yeah, Bermuda? Wow.
And he cried this morning saying
Yeah.
how cold Bermuda is. Why do we have to live with our husband? And
Is
we
it
go
cold?
to stay somewhere else so we can drive and drive.
Yeah. So the human spirit always wants something else. That's us too. So it really is you getting to the comfort level of how do I provide what he needs, supposing you're more introverted, because I know I have 2 kids that are particularly introverted and 2 that are particularly extroverted, and simply made sure that they had more opportunities to do certain things. Having said that, I was the mom who said, well, but you need to find a way to make the money for you to do those things, because I actually thought I would reduce the number of extracurriculars that they would engage in, because I said you need to earn the money, but they actually turned up the numbers of it, significantly. So so that's, I would say that there is some level of balance, but as a mom, we never get to the place of feeling like we did things 100% right all the time, or we're always in balance. And that, I just think, is an experience of being human, that we just feel like we don't always do things perfectly. And I think the reality is we don't. And also, don't think you can make it. You can. I don't actually think you can get to the sweet spot of having figured it all out. So, I have so many things that I have as an option to speak with you about right now. I am offering a 5-week group coaching program. So what that looks like is me actually going into the things that you find are the most challenging elements of your homeschool and unpacking it, but unpacking it individually and also collectively. I want to make sure that we are actually feeling comfortable in the group. So I would consider doing a group of 2 at a time if that made you feel more comfortable. You can probably see this already if you know me at all. I am very real and I will say things honestly, and I invite you to be honest too, and just share vulnerably. And everything that you share here and everything that you share in any of the coaching scenarios are held closely to my heart. So I really had so much more that I wanted to share with you. I'll say this, if you haven't got the Deschool Your Homeschool checklist already, I have some things on that checklist that will help you consider thoughts that you may be having right now in how do you actually go about doing this. You can do this. You can watch your kids for a week. When you haven't prescribed what you think they should be doing, just watch them and see what happens. What do they do? Write it down. And then if you are of the persuasion where you've been homeschooled or you've been schooled, you could actually say, what are they doing? Okay, they're writing their short story or they're writing their story, but it's not language arts. So is it learning or is it not learning? Well, just write it under language arts because they are indeed writing. Or perhaps you want to, you're watching your child counting something or whatever. Just remember, every little subject, every little thing that they're doing, it can theoretically be put into a subject area. And so you could do that for a week. That might be something that you'd want to do. And I'll tell you that that is for you. That's not for your child. It's not for the portfolio that maybe you have to provide for a teacher. It's just for you to look at them and really notice, are they learning? Because it's my belief that everyone is always learning, that we make things difficult for kids to stay engaged because we force feed them stuff they don't want to be learning. A beautiful observation that Nadira made earlier was that she saw that her son, just at a certain time, he just clocks out. He's just not as engaged. And so she notices that, and then she actually acts on it and says, okay, we're done. So you can observe your kids, pay attention, write them down, and actually look at them through a schooled grid if that makes you feel more comfortable. If you're like, that doesn't work for me, don't do that one. But definitely define what you believe in education to be. So actually write it down and then recognize that next year you probably won't think the same way. And you'll have a whole bunch more information because in some ways you're doing a very large research study right now of your children. And so am I. I have had the same experience, except I'm using many other people's kids now as research studies. And I can see over and over and over that when you try to force feed something into a child, you can convince them. It is possible actually to convince them. But when you really just keep doing the thing that you believe to be true, and this is the way it's going to be, you're actually helping them to turn off from the idea of engaging. It actually makes them less motivated. But define what you believe in education to be. I've got an assessment in the, a 1-week assessment in, I guess I'm going to show you this, even though it's not the colored version, but the Deschool Your Homeschool workbook. And it's about a 15 pages of trying to clarify what it is exactly you're engaging with your child or what you see as a challenge for your child and how to deschool your homeschool. So observe your kids, define an education, actually do an assessment, and then determine what's getting in your way, your mindsets. So this workbook often is used as a journal opportunity for you each morning. You can just take one of the questions and think about it as you're journaling. But I would also encourage you to explore the gaps in your education. Actually look back at your own version of an education or your own experience of it and say, how did I feel about it? What are the areas that I'm actually trying to compensate right now in my own homeschool? I'm trying to do something different for my kids because I didn't have the home or the education that I would have wanted. Ask yourself that, because as moms, we almost always are somehow projecting something onto our kids and saying, I want this for you because I want it for you, but also I totally would have wanted this for me. And that's good. That means you love your kids. But sometimes we get in our own way and make it more complicated because we're so intent on giving them something that we needed, not what they needed. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, as far as what I want, as far as what I feel like he needs, one of the things that came to mind when you said that
Yeah.
was that I am a reader.
Yeah.
I like to read in my free time, if you will.
Mhm.
And my stepson, he's 21. I've been a stepmom since he was about 7. And I got him into reading, I guess you could say, whereas he would, we'd say it's time for bed and he'd have a flashlight reading a book under his blanket. Whereas this guy, he's like, I'm not reading unless you tell me to read. He does not independently pick up a book. He does not ask me to read a book to him unless it's, something random that caught his eye. But otherwise, he's not into books like I am. So do I want that for him? Yes. But am I going to push it? No.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you an example from my own life in the last little while. This isn't actually a directly educational thing, but sometimes we just want so bad for our kids to have something, and it's totally fair. That makes sense. There's a reason that we want the things for our children that we do. And that's good. That means we love them, we care. And also, that doesn't mean that we're actually really seeing them. Sometimes we're not actually really noticing who are these actual kids right here. What do they really need? And that takes, sometimes that takes some time to figure out. But what I was going to say is that in the last week or so, I really wanted to do a certain activity with my son. I was so excited. I'm like, it was a lantern festival, and I bought all these papers to decorate these jars. We're going to put in these new candles that I bought. We're going to go to this big light festival that our town does. And like so many people in town go there. And I just thought, this is so fun. We're going to go do something together. He's been busier lately and I'm not spending as much time with him. So we're going to go. And then I told him, we're going to do this. And here's what I did. And he went, I don't want to go. I'm like, but I want us to go. He's 14, okay? And so I want him to go. In my head, my first default setting is we're going. Okay? This is my default setting. And when I said to my husband, I'm just going to say we're just going to go. And he's like, think that'll work? No, I don't think that'll work. Okay. Nope, that's not the way I'll approach it. So I went upstairs and I said, hey, Zach, you don't have to go. I'm not going to force you to go. I just want you to know that I just wanted to spend time with you. I've always wanted to do this with you and haven't had a chance. If you want to go with me, that'll be great. And if you don't, that's fine. And then he saw that I just wanted to spend time with him. And he said, okay, yep, we'll go. And then we went, and it was cute for younger kids. Apparently I need to have more kids. No. But he decided to go with me. And it wasn't because I was trying to make it happen, because usually when I have tried to make it happen, there's always a retaliating energy. And the other thing is trying to be coercive or manipulative. Hey, we'll go get a piece of pizza. That only works until a certain age, and then they wise up to a certain age, and it doesn't work anymore. And then I just came out straight and I said, this is valuable to me. That means, though, just for the record, the story actually clarifies that this was his decision. And so he could have said no, and then I would have had to accept no. And how does that apply to the education? I don't think that you're always going to ask each of your kids what they want to do all the time. So I just want you to know that that's not how I roll anyway. I know that we're there to lead. And sometimes we decide we really want you to learn what's the word? We want you to learn something anyways. We want to learn plate tectonics. We think you need to learn plate tectonics because you are on the western coast of United States and Canada, or Japan, or, you know, wherever the ring of fire is. But you're going to have to learn about this, because we're going to have to be prepped with an emergency plan if there is ever an earthquake. And so if you decide that that's important, then you do you, then you decide that's important. And he may not like it, and that's okay too. Then it would be a discussion about boundaries for you to say, hey, are you comfortable with asserting yourself with your son and saying, we're going to do it anyway? But when we get really clear, I'm going to sum up now, because I think when you get really clear on what you think an education is anyway, you get a lot clearer on, is this really working for you? Is it really working for this child? Who are they? What are they supposed to be doing in this world? You don't have a clear picture of that yet, but when you're watching those things, then it gets a lot clearer what you're actually doing in your day-to-day. And then you're not feeling like you're juggling, and you're not feeling like you're fighting with your kids all the time. And you feel confident that what you're doing is the best choice for your family. Well, it was a pleasure chatting with everybody, and I invite you to connect with me. By the way, tomorrow actually is a book club, and so I'm actually discussing John Taylor Gatto at the book club tomorrow, so you're welcome to join me there. And also next Thursday is when I'm going to start group coaching for deschooling your homeschool. If you're interested, let me know. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure
Teresa.
chatting with everybody, and really lovely to meet you, Anvi.
Thank you so much.
I hope your trip goes really well, and no worries. The next time we plan a homeschool co-op day, Bermuda, woohoo!
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question. So the
Sure.
deschooling work, what is it, support group, will we be able to work on defining what's important
Yeah.
to us?
Yeah.
Because I still struggle with that.
Yes, absolutely. That's what is, I don't know if you were here when I showed, I think you were, the Deschool Your Homeschool Journaling Workbook. There's an entire section in there. If you're joining the coaching program, I'm actually going to be offering this to you. Thank you so much for being here, Nadira.
Thank you. And yes, it will take us a couple days to get back to Bermuda. So I will check my email. Thanks.
Yeah, such a delight meeting everybody. I hope that I'm able to answer your questions too, Munisa. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me?
Thank you. I think you've clarified quite a few things for me, and you know, I will be watching your or listening to your podcast and kind of following you to see what else I'll be learning along the way, because I know there'll be a lot of learning for me too.
You betcha. It's going to be a fun journey. It really is. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to learn all sorts of things. You should know this. You're going to be the one that has the best education out of everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to meet you. Have a good trip back.
Thank you.
Bye.